Our next speaker comes from Balbix. So they are an AI-powered cyber risk management platform. So we've got Gaurav Banga, who is the CEO of Balbix. So give him a round of applause for kicking off day two.
Well, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. It's absolutely fantastic to be Leonardo DiCaprio for even 10 seconds. Just imagine you're watching a movie and he morphed into me, and that's it. And you'll just keep imagining that. So I'm very happy to be here and talking about a topic which I know you guys really like, AI, and we spoke with a bunch of folks yesterday. So what is this thing all about, right? So here it is. A long time ago, this is what it felt like when many of us joined the profession, and particularly all you guys who are leaders in the profession. And you had, obviously, just like any good Jedi, you had a Jedi Master, and that was Ben. And Ben told you that the more you practice, the more you prepare, the better you will do. And it's kind of as obvious, right? I'm just stating the obvious. So today, unfortunately, Ben would be turning in his grave because, sadly, we are not prepared enough. And in many cases, we are just failing to prepare. And part of it comes from just this huge amount of confusion, the exploding attack surface, some new things that you have to worry about, the intense pressure. We have to balance budgets now. For the last 24, 36 months, money has no longer been free, and we have to do all that. So what has happened to the numbers? So this is a picture of what I would say is the forefront of cybersecurity, preparation, which is fixing, understanding your attack surface and fixing your vulnerabilities and your exposures before the bad guys can get it. And these are the numbers over the last, a few years. And what you will see is that the numbers in 2024 have already exceeded, or well on plan to exceed, anything that we've seen ever before. And moreover, we are now more and more cognizant about the fact that there are things beyond CVEs. We have AppSec findings and pen test findings and misconfigurations and all sorts of things that sometimes are a lot bigger than the total number of CVEs. And it's a mess. And if you look at the statistics, this is a report card for the entire industry. And this is not a good report card. What it says is that for the average enterprise, up to 55 days later, we have only fixed about half of the new vulnerabilities found. That's a terrible number, only because if you look at the second statistic over here, which is that for CISA Kevs, the adversary now, they used to take about 60 days, not more than 3-4 years ago. And they were not CISA Kevs, but they were called high criticals. And now they take about 5 days to weaponize. So you're kind of like riding a bicycle, and somebody else is riding a very fast motorcycle or a Porsche or something like that, right? And that's unfortunately the challenge. And then there's the second thing, which is related to just what is it, the scope of our responsibility. And the traditional view, which we are all growing out of, and some of us are much further ahead than the others, is that you have a typical VM scope, it's born from IT, and that's all we do. And particularly if your boss is an IT guy, a CIO, and the people around you are from the IT background, unfortunately, that's their world. That's how they think. Whereas your attack surface as a cybersecurity professional is a lot bigger. And you all know it, right? I mean, many companies can be compromised without touching anything from the traditional IT space. So you can have this perception of, things are okay versus an idea that things are not okay. And you have to decide which world you want to live in. So unfortunately, the attack surface, as we kind of look at it, it's a very, very hard math problem. And it's a hard math problem because if you just look at the permutations and combinations that we have to dwell with, 15 million CVEs, misconfigs, failed controls, 120 TTPs, there are over 300, but 120 of them are active. More than 10 controls, dozens of network zones, lots of groups that we need to worry about. They could be business units, they could be application groups, all of that. And if you start doing the permutations and combinations of these and just multiply, you end up with this gigantic number of permutations and combinations by which bad things can happen. Now, here's something special about 10 to the 12. It is a number, if that's the amount of data that we have to look at every day or every hour, depending on the size of the organization, 200 people will take 4 lifetimes to get to that. And of course, nobody has 200 people. Most of us don't have 200 people. Some of us do. But we do not. None of us has 4 lifetimes per day. And this is, I'm not talking about manual efforts, I'm talking about current efforts. I'm talking about dashboards and five tools or 15 tools, and asking your team to try to keep up. And it's inhuman to expect anybody to succeed. And if you want to know how inhuman, I have a picture over here for you. Imagine you were in New York, and suddenly every day there was a new skyscraper of stuff you needed to get through. And we don't see the stuff sometimes because 15 million or 0.2 petabytes, what does that mean? But when you try to visualize it like this, you really know what that means. And this is what we are doing to our people. If we expect them to, if you're a CISO, this is what your team has to do. If you're a CIO, this is what your team has to do. If you're a CEO, this is what your team has to do, unless you think differently. So how do you think differently? Well, first off is the realization that you need something, and I'm going to offer that something is AI. And if you do not leverage AI, this is what you're doing. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. All right, so there's a second thing. So let's call what I just told you the hard computational problem of the attack surface. There's another problem, though. And I'm going to ask this question to all of you. How many, when you leave this room and you get on that Uber or Waymo and somebody asks you, hey, what do you do? And you start talking about how hard your job is, how many people outside the industry truly understand what you're saying? Because if they did, something would have changed by now. But they don't. And it's kind of very obvious to see this kind of a conversation happening where you are trying to do the right thing, or your team is trying to do the right thing, and the business has different consideration. And it's not that either of them is wrong or right. It is just that there is a divide, a communication gap, which is preventing the right thing from happening. So with this, I want to really frame the problem a little bit. The current cybersecurity problem has 2 aspects to it. One of them is computation, and the second one is communication. And it actually turns out that Gen AI, LLMs, conversational AI, these are some of the best tools that could have happened to help us do this. Now, we're all afraid of AI, but here's what I'll say, right? There was a thing called the Industrial Revolution, and all the people that were afraid of the things that were happening in the Industrial Revolution, 4 or 5 years later, they were obsolete. And that's exactly where we are right now. If we embrace AI, if we understand what it can do and it cannot do, then we'll be on the right side. This thing is too big to stop now for any one of us, and it makes no sense to stop it anyway. So let's try to understand this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my company's platform, and then I'll come back and talk general principles. So this is what we do, right? The first off is we talked about the petabytes of data. They all need to be brought in, and they need to put together. You gain visibility. You have a deduplicated, cleaned up view of your users, your applications, your attack surface, everything. And then this is kind of like the structure in which it is evaluated to give you your actions that you need to do that. And I'm not going to talk about any of the inferencing that we do. This presentation is available online, and you can go. If you scan the QR code at the last slide, you can get it. But we also are able to calculate risk and quantify it in dollars and cents. And that what ends up happening is you have a bottom-up way by which you can talk about risk in dollars and cents. And once you can do that, everything becomes easy. Because what you ask your IT team to do makes business sense. And when you go to a boardroom, it still makes business sense. You can demonstrate the ROI of your controls, and that's really the most important thing. The one last thing I'll talk about is every one of us also needs an assistant. And we have one in the form of an app that understands your role. Sorry, what happened to my slide over there? That understands your role and is able to answer questions beyond that, in context. And this can really help with communication. And this is all possible with GenAI. So what does an AI-powered program feel like? And I'm going to blow this thing out. You first get visibility, then you're able to burn down risk to acceptable levels, and you're able to keep it there, all with the power of data. So thank you very much. There is a lot more information about the slide deck can be found with that QR code. And the Balbix team will be here in case you want to see a demo. We'll be right here. Thank you very much.